Well, everybody, how are you doing after last night? We're back in One Leeds HQ, and listen, Leeds United getting a crucial win over Sunderland last night. A late one, a late night from me. I just can't seem to simmer down after these games. You know, instances like this. I remember it with Leicester last season. You just can't simmer down. Early rising, late night, but it's all worth it for Leeds United. What an unbelievable win it was last night, coming back from despair, really. 1-0 down until the 77th minute. Changes came on, and by God, did they make a difference. And there is no better person that I'd rather chat through this with than my man KG. He's back on the channel after a long hiatus, and it's great to see him back. I'm just going to get into a couple of your comments before we bring the main man in. Prime debrief this nowadays. Oh, it's actually made me laugh. Yeah, it is indeed, mate. It is. I'm going to go with you on that one. I completely agree. Love this title. Got to stage my lunch around this channel, not to miss. Come on, you whites. Yes. Hello, everybody. Hello. Jay's in the building. Yes, lads. What a night. Voice still gone. Was still ringing, but wouldn't change it for the world. Conor, going to flash your pajamas again? Certainly not, mate. Slightly embarrassing for me last night, but it is what it is. KG, how are we doing, my man?
I'm feeling great. Feeling great. What's up, everyone in the chat? How's everyone doing, man? I hope everyone should be feeling great right now. Everyone should be feeling great. I'm still on a high from last night, and I just said to you offline, it feels like it is like one cautious step towards the Premier League. You know, I know, and I get some people's doubts because this is Leeds United. We could very well beat Sheffield United next Monday, then lose the next 3. But I've got a feeling that's not going to happen. That's just me.
Nice. And that's the end of the show, everyone. Cheers for joining.
Yeah, bye, everyone. Bye.
Yeah,
one's
man.
In there. One's in there. There you
go. I've said to you, I don't really know where to start this, to be honest. No notes, no kind of, it's just a general chat about everything, about Leeds at this moment in time. And obviously me and you haven't caught up in a while. Let's just focus on last night though, mate. Yeah. Give us your overall synopsis for people who've not heard it so far. I mean, I thought Sunderland, probably the best team we've come up against this season, to be fair, across the two legs. Yeah, first half and second half, they were probably the better team in the first. Second half, watch the extended highlights back, as I'm sure many have done this morning. And it actually seemed, Cage, and you look at the stats, mate, it's like 21 shots to their 6, I think it was. But crucially, they got 6 on target. Leeds didn't really break through, I felt, until obviously those 2 set pieces. Go on, mate. What are your thoughts on the game overall?
Yeah, it was such a weird game because going into it, I thought it was going to be more open. I thought Sunderland, because they needed the 3 points more than we did, even though we needed them, they needed them to get equal with Burnley and make Burnley think about it so they can't just draw their way to the top 2. And I thought they'd come out with a bit more purpose, but they sat deep. You know, it was almost like playing a bottom of the league side, but just with better quality when they did hit us on the break, which was the difference with their goal. But it was one of those where it just seemed like one of the games we had before 2025, where it was just slow plodding. We couldn't break them down. Our shots, like you said, we had loads of shots, but a lot of them were getting blocked. A lot of them were going sky high. And then when they had their opportunities, they were kind of open. So they were getting shots on Elan Melia yesterday. But it was one of those where it was just begging for a change somewhere. And I guess if you got question marks about that, if it could have happened earlier. But it was a game, I didn't expect it to be like that, but I did understand why Daniel Farke went with Gruev in midfield, just because of Sunderland having Lafay, Joby, and Chris Rigg. I understood having that defensive midfielder in there. But with the game going the way it was, especially being 1-0 down, I thought we should have made a change at halftime, if we're being real. And those are the margins that you won't be able to get away with in the Prem, just saying that off the bat. But in the Championship, you can get away with it, especially with the quality that we have. And just having the quality that we have on the bench, I know our squad isn't the biggest, but in terms of quality, it is the best in the division by a mile as well.
Yeah, Hinchcliffe, who I know we're not all massive fans of, but Hinchcliffe said something this morning on Sky. He said, you know, he thinks that Leeds United side is stronger than the Bielsa side this time round in the Championship, just purely because we're so strong, aren't we, KG, across the whole pitch? You kind of, even when you're down and out, it felt like that with that Bielsa side. Obviously, you know, it was maybe a little bit thin. It was getting used to his methods, and obviously, you know, the amount of injuries we racked up in those seasons was because of that adaptation to his style. But this season, it feels even injury-wise, KG, we've been pretty damn good this year for the whole part of it. We're not used to seeing it, and the rotation is just crazy. I mean, people were saying the other day, it's like, you know, the other week, I should say, when we lost to Millwall. It's like, are you worried about our depth now? And it's like, well, not massively, because, you know, you look at like the match day rotation and you've got your starting 11, and then you've got maybe 3 or 4 others who are going to feature. Those 3 or 4 others, KG, I mean, you potentially looking at Strauch, who's on the bench, Rothwell, Joseph Nonto, Ramazani. You kind of look at it and you think, oh, flipping heck, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, look, the difference is, and this is where I always get the hate, but the difference between this team and the Bielsa team is that these are actually good football players. You know, Bielsa was a large part of why that team got over the line. That was a mid-table football side until he coached them to be as great as they were. That's just the cold hard facts of it. This team is a good team. You know, when you're talking about Solomon, listen, Solomon, I've been his biggest fan. I've rinsed the King Solomon, you know, Lord of the Manor. I've rinsed all of those titles this season. But even yesterday, it wasn't coming off for him. He was getting clattered a few times, but when he did manage to get a cross off, it was going a little bit overcooked. He overcooked his crosses. So then you're having to rely on other people. Dan James wasn't going for him. So then you've got your bench. And listen, you're talking about night and day from last season. We hardly got any goals from the bench last year. I think that was our 14th yesterday. 14th. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But that was our 14th goal from the subs bench this season. And it makes a huge difference. That's how Ipswich did it last year. They were getting goals from all sources. And that's what we've done. We may have lost the individual talents that we had last year, but just overall as a team, it's way stronger than last season in a poorer league as well, by the way.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like that. I think, as I say, it's credit to Leeds as well. I think they were probably our toughest test last night, I thought, just in terms of a footballing side. And it had some of the hallmarks of Leeds in the Premier League, KG, when we were at home and we just couldn't get through that other side. And the other side, especially in that first half, were able to, you know, cement control and dictate the tempo a little bit. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on kind of the promotion picture as well. Are you very much now just sort of turning around and going, I mean, because there's a lot of people this morning saying, you know, it's 7 points. I know you're quite similar to me. You're kind of like cautiously optimistic. You don't want to put that cap on it, but well, I'll ask a direct question. Is it all but done now for Leeds United in that top 2 phase? Because I'm hearing a lot of people say it this morning.
I guess, you know what it is? If we was looking at this and it was another club doing what we've done, having the results since the turn of 2025, we'd be saying that we're up. But because it's Leeds United and we know what it's like when the pressure's on, especially towards the latter end of the season, you always have to have that little bit of caution. But I'm just going by what I've seen, and this isn't just form, this is a pattern. We've literally lost 3 games all season. Since 2025's turn, we've had numerous clean sheets. It's only not getting spoken about because of Burnley's incredible record in that department. And even if you want to talk about a cup loss with our much changed team, we then come back and win 4-0 at Watford, you know, and then we've beaten Coventry away and they've gone back onto the form they were before we beat them. We are the anomaly in the league. And that's how I've seen us since the start of the season. Obviously, football isn't played on paper, but I just look at the other teams. That's what I do. I look at other teams and see what they've got, see what we're up against. And this championship, what's the thing with this championship league is that a lot of these players should be in League One. And it's ever since the worldwide shutdown, the championship hasn't been able to pick off those poor Premier League players that don't get minutes there. There's no money in the league anymore to do it unless you've been relegated and you've got parachute money. So the quality of player has gone down significantly in this division.
As well, KG, just to add to that, which is probably why you kind of look at Sunderland last night and you're actually quite surprised by how well they played and what a bit of a competitor they were with the lack of parachute payments and lack of Premier League football recently for them.
Yeah, they're a big club though. They're a big club and they're able to attract that kind of player. I mean, no other team. I don't even think if we went in for Enzo Lefebvre getting him in the championship. He obviously had that relationship with his coach, but they're a good side, you know, Sunderland, and they've managed to keep a couple of their gems even through the years of not being in the Premier League. They've managed to keep some good players. It kind of reminds me of when we was in League One and we had, for me, I felt like we was just that Jermaine Beckford away from being promoted to the Premier League the first time, but obviously he left for Everton. I feel like they're kind of like in that similar vein where they've got the tools there. But that's what I'm saying. There's only a few clubs, and it's pretty much the top 4 as it is, that I look at and go, okay, I can see why we're in the promotion race. I've seen Middlesbrough kind of in 2 games recently. They shouldn't be nowhere near a playoff spot with the defending putting on.
Terrible defensive displays, haven't they?
Oh
Terrible.
my Lord. I mean, against Sunderland, it was bad enough. And then Sheffield United, it was like Keystone Cups back there. Defenders pass into each other, goalkeepers and defenders all mixed up. It's a joke. It's a joke. But that's why we've had to separate ourselves. And I think we've done that in the main overall this season.
Yeah, 100%. Let's just get into a few comments in here. Jay said, I feel last season we dropped points in this type of game, not this year. Even at 1 down, the feeling in the ground that we could still get something. And at 1-1, there was going to be one win. Yeah, it did. I mean, obviously, I think you were watching at home, weren't you, KG? Prove me wrong if you weren't, mate. But obviously, I watched your instant match reaction. So that was up pretty quickly. But it did feel very much like, I don't know what it was in that second half. For you, was it Sunderland maybe setting? I mean, I've heard a lot of Sunderland fans saying last night and this morning that they kind of set up in that second half to defend, and Labrise has done this a couple of times, and they don't go for that killer blow. But I guess then you've got to look at your opposition. You've got to look at the strength that we have, and you know how Leeds. I think we've scored now the most goals 75 minutes onwards. You've mentioned the conversation there a little bit about substitutes. So from a Regis Labrise standpoint, he's got to be pragmatic, of course, in a game like that, hasn't he? I think you just go all out to score more and more goals. And I guess, you know, in hindsight, that probably would have been the better tactic, but you've got to be extremely careful against Leeds United. And it feels like we're always right in the game until the last minute, really. And I think Jay's sort of illustrating that there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just on the discipline side for ourselves, because we almost got dragged down into their game last night. I mean, you know, Bogle, you know, kicked out after he got dubbed up at one time, which put him on a tightrope for the rest of the game. But he handled it brilliantly. He was excellent in the second half, like he has been in so many games this season. Jaden,
he can't defend though. He can't defend.
Apparently so. There was this is what I didn't get with that. Just quickly on that, just a quick side note. He was always going to have a bit of rest on him after being in a team that conceded over 100 goals in the Premier League. Yeah. He was always going to have a little PTSD, but he's shown at this level since he's settled in, he's been automatic. You haven't had to talk about Jayden Bogle in a negative sense. He's been absolutely fantastic for us. And even Tanaka, I mean, I think both of the midfielders, it was right that they both got replaced. I don't think either of them had a good game yesterday. But Tanaka, he took a cheap yellow against Dan Neil. You know, I understand if it's Lefay, Joby, you know, do it to one of those. Don't do it to him. But, you know, it was one of those where two of our players, they were on tight ropes for the rest of the game, and we handled it professionally. And Sunderland did drop back even more trying to defend that lead, which is dangerous, but they were looking good for it because Dan James had one shot, I think, in the first half, which was like a daisy cutter, went through to Patterson. Then it wasn't until Piroe in the 70th minute where we had a real, you know, decent shot on target. So you can see their plan was working up to a point. But then I did feel once we got an equalizer, there was only one winner for me, only one.
Yeah, and you could hear it in the crowd, couldn't you? It was almost like that roar, and there was only going to be one team. You're right, KG. There was only going to be one team that was going to do something. That look with you, I know we like talking about technical footballers, and me and you. I don't know. Me and you maybe. I think sometimes we have. I know you hark back to the O'Leary days a lot as well, and talking about these technical ballers who you love. I'm very similar. You know, I weirdly I always kind of put technical footballers, even if they're out of form, above the players that are in form, but maybe from my perspective aren't on their level when it comes to technical efficiency, which is bizarre. And I know a lot of people give me a bit of crap for that. And the perfect example is probably, you know, Daniel James and Willie Gnonto. You know, I'm still sticking with Willie Gnonto overall, you know, but Dan James has been unbelievable. So that's probably an example of that. But yeah, I mean, looking at the game last night and the midfield complexion, it was interesting because I sort of pushed back maybe a little bit on what you said. And I don't know if you actually think this, and you'll let us know here, or if you just knew what Daniel Farke was going to do. And I agree. I sort of thought that he'd put Gruev in for this game. I think Gruev's been better, I have to say, post-injury. I think Tanaka's definitely aided that. But I think you saw the levels last night, KG. I think him up against maybe Bellingham and Rigg, box-to-box midfielders. I think you saw him with a couple of forward passes which were intercepted, and he then gave a little bit of a restricted figure for me. And I actually thought, and this is a harsh thing to say, I thought he was hiding a little bit last night. And that's not because he didn't want to get on the ball, but maybe he was a little bit fearful of a Sunderland midfield press, which was a very, very good, you know, they've got good operators in that midfield. Going forward, I think, proactively, what would you do in that midfield? Even if Leeds are trying to defend, if Pascal's available, do you put Ampadu in there and leave Gruev out? If Leeds are trying to, nail the opposition team as well, do you then put Joe Rothwell in there to be proactive in there and drive through that midfield? It feels like maybe the Rothwell, Tanaka's always in there, isn't he? But it feels like the balance of the midfield, maybe if Leeds are trying to defend and Leeds are trying to attack, maybe needs to be pivoted on Ampadu and Rothwell as opposed to maybe Ampadu and Gruev. It just feels leaving someone like Rothwell out of this 11 at certain points is madness. And you saw that really with the last sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes last night.
Yeah, no, listen, I do see it a little bit differently, but with the Gruev thing, just to further on that, I did understand Danny Farker putting him in there just for what he's done in the away games, because I was the one in previous games telling people on my stream, no, he's actually done the job he's supposed to. He's been protecting the midfield, he's been recovering the ball, getting the tackles in. That's been his job away from home.
Yeah,
and I understood it against Sunderland with the quality of players they have in there, but it wasn't going for him last night in any way. For Gruev yesterday, like you mentioned, the passes, there was one in particular in the first half where Solomon would have been one-on-one against Trey Hume. The pass was just extremely short and it got cut out. His set pieces were absolutely garbage yesterday. I mean,
can I just say, KG, there was one, I don't know if you remember, but it was in the second half, it was on the right side. He put and it landed on the penalty spot, and it was actually a lovely ball in, and it was from a free kick, I think it was, just 5 yards in from the halfway line, and it was actually a really good ball in. But that was the only one. I mean, he had it was KG. The word. At some point, I had a mic last night, and I had to go like this, and I'm just going off camera and swearing. As a professional footballer, hitting the first man as many times he did, it'll always be etched into my brain as how on earth can you not be?
Yeah, it was either the first man, Connor, or it was just floating into the goalkeeper's arms. There was no in between, and obviously anyone can slip over, but it just added to the performance where his slip leads to a double chance for Sunderland. It just was not a good game for him, and that's why I was surprised he did come on in the second half. But I did understand. I completely get it now. Rothwell had a good cameo, but like you said there about Gruev in the level, speaking of Rothwell, because now Danny Farker's made his, his euphoric comments yesterday talking about Rothwell like he's Xavi, saying that, if you love football, you love Joe Rothwell, but you can only go by the manager himself, and he hasn't been playing him. He's been preferring Gruev in important games. Rothwell himself did go off the boil, and I'll further this to you. We're talking about Gruev against the better midfielders there. What about Rothwell next season in the Prem against Tonali, Joe Linton, and Bruno Guimaraes? And that's where I go to, and this is where I get a load of hate for this kind of stuff, because for me, Rothwell is a very, very good championship player, not in the Premier League for me. And it's just simple as that. But if you're talking going forward for the rest of the season, there's, apart from Sheffield United next week, where they will have that pest in midfield Peck, they've got Vinny Souza in there, who's a tough battler. And of course, Gus Harmo will be fit for that game. We'll see if he starts Gruev again, because up until yesterday, Gruev did his job well. He may want that at Bramall Lane next week. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he goes, especially after that cameo that Rothwell put on yesterday, because he was brilliant. I mean, the two balls were brilliant. First of all, big up to Ramazani for that pass out to Rothwell, because I'd be claiming that all day long. I'd be saying, yeah, I meant all of that. If I'm Ramazani, saying, yeah, I meant that one.
Mate, he was spicy last night as well. He's giving it to the Sunderland fans, giving it to Dan Neil. He was spicy. Something irked him.
They deserved it. Look, Sunderland were giving it to us in the first half, and I felt we looked a little bit meek. I felt, where's the real men for us, man? Where's the men like getting back at what's his name, Trey Hume, for putting his knee in Solomon? Where's that? And then obviously Brendan Aaronson then gives it to Enzo Lefebvre for a bit in that same half. But I needed to see that, and we got that in the second half, and we compounded it with a winner, which just absolutely aggravated them for everything that they worked up until that point. But yeah, it's going to be interesting next week to see what we do in midfield. Will he go with Rothwell, or will he want to go with Gruev again, who gives him that more defensive stability away from home? It's going to be an interesting selection.
It is, yeah. I mean,
sorry. And just quickly, because another part of your question was, Absolutely get Strauch and Roden back together. I've been saying that forever. And even Danny Farker himself said he doesn't want to see Ampadu there during the run-in. This is the time now. He said Strauch is fit. Get him back at centre-half with Roden. Get Ampadu in midfield. And for me, it's Ampadu and Tanaka, because you release Tanaka to do even more going forward, like we saw the other week, where the ball was sticking to him. He plays it to Solomon. Then Piroe finishes. Lovely goal. One of the best goals, that we've scored this season. Probably the best for me. But yeah, that's what I would do.
It's a techie KG and Connor goal, that one, wasn't it? It was nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, lovely goal. So yeah, no, I think there's a lot to touch on there in terms of the midfield, but like you said, we'll touch on just the Strauch impact. I think it's the ball playing out from the back. I think look, from a perspective of, I cannot understand why Lampard didn't do this. For instance, for Coventry, you had Ellis Sims and Hadji Wright causing us a lot of problems at the CBS last season. I thought for ample parts of it, they were pinning the centre backs, and I keep using this word, KG, but I cannot understand why they weren't playing that ball over the top, and Ellis Sims wasn't absolutely pinning Ethan Ampadu exactly like Isidore did last night. You get the midfield in the rounded to win those second balls. And I felt that's what Isidore was doing to Ethan Ampadu in the first half. To be honest, mate, he was completely bullying him. That's how it looked like, and he was leaning on the smaller man, and that's exactly what you should do as a physically imposing centre forward for me. And Sims was leaning on Rodon. It was bizarre. Yeah. But yeah, in that game, Isidore did that, and I think he just doesn't do that to Pascal Strauch. It just doesn't happen. And if puts and maybes, hindsight, but you're not getting a man like Pascal Strauch, a man mountain at 6'4", 85 plus kg. He is not getting pinned like that by Wilson Isidore. It's just not happening. So I think you're right in terms of what we do against Sheffield United and the technical ability as well of Pascal, building out from the back, finding his right man. His pass completion rate was just unbelievable when he came on as well. But the threat, KG, from set pieces, he's our only threat. He literally is our only defending set pieces. Rode on immense. Leeds, I thought, even in the last sort of 10 games, defending set pieces, we've been good. Attacking them, there's no one who perceptively is as good as Strauch. Never mind just connecting with the ball, but perceiving where the ball is going to land is a skill in itself, isn't it, KG? And he was just top draw last night.
Absolutely. I mean, I say it near enough at the start of every season that I expect Strauch to get at least 5 goals from set pieces. Yeah. He's got the ability to do so, and he proves it. He proves it. And when he's in form anyway, he proves that he can get the goals. But you're right. We can have as many set pieces as we want when he's off the pitch. We may as well not bother. No. We may as well not bother. We may as well just give the throw in, let the opposition start again, and we win the ball back, because there's just no point. But when he's on there, he's the real focal point. He's almost like our Gabriel, in a lesser sense, Gabriel for Arsenal, where everything just runs through him. The camera just pans to Gabriel. It's like, oh, Arsenal got a corner, but yeah, he's just a legitimate threat both defensively and offensively, and that's why we need to get him back in. And listen, this is nothing on Ampadu. Ampadu's fielding admirably back there like he did last season, but then there was a point where it started to fall apart a little. And even at the start of the season, both Ampadu and Joe Rodon said, yeah, I'm a central midfielder. Or Rodon says, as good as he was as my partner, he's a central midfielder. Just put him in their strongest positions. It's not like we're putting a scrub back there. It's Pascal, who's been really good for us this season, really good. So yeah, put our strongest team out there, and we'll just continue to cook.
Yeah, and absolutely. Let's not forget the goal that he scored against Sheffield United as well from that set piece. But what a finish that was! The hook left foot finish into the top corner. I think that was around about the latter part of the second half, I think. So similar vibes. Tom says, hello from sunny coast, Australia. Love to see Connor and KG on a stream together. What a game that was. Yeah, cheers, Tom. Milk, who is a Sunderland fan, says, flowers to Leeds. What a team. Defiant till the end. Fair play, lads. Jam says, can we touch on where Connor got his pyjama bottoms from? Let's not touch on that.
Hey.
Michael says the Blunts. Do we have Gruev in midfield? Yeah, we kind of touched on that, Michael. I think it's interesting. I kind of look at the game at Ellen Road, and I think how dominant we were in that fixture, KG, against Sheffield United. And I do think we just come off the back of a really good point at Norwich, albeit I think we could have won that game, but Norwich were flying at that moment in time. We just got the point up at Sunderland where there's an argument our overall performance was better than the one last night.
It was excellent. It was the best away performance really.
Yeah, we were brilliant. And then obviously Sheffield United at home, which followed. I think it was immediately afterwards. You had that balance in the midfield of Rothwell and Tanaka, and they just couldn't live with it. They just could not live with how strong we were in midfield. And that night we won that battle. And I guess that's the interesting part of it right now, isn't it? But Farke has options. I guess, I mean, would you be disappointed if he started Rothwell against Sheffield United? I can't imagine you would be, but I guess that is it just now, KG? Is it? It's just I don't know. Look, I go to a midfield three at points.
The one thing I'll say to you, Connor, is that whatever choices we make, we're strong.
Yes.
Right.
Or
are you thinking Gruev might limit us in the game? The only thing is you're looking at it in the way that we dominated in the first game, and we did. But Chris Wilder made so many changes that he didn't make up to that point, where we're going to have to be wary of him correcting those mistakes that he made, because he literally had Raksaki that scored 2 goals in the previous game to us. He benched him because he wanted to.
He was playing a back 4 normally, wasn't he? And he went to a back 5.
He went to a back 5, took out Raksaki for that extra protection because, and Raksaki literally got them the 2 goals in the Luton game before. Yeah. And he made changes and made Sheffield United play in a way that they don't usually play. So, and Wilder, he'll want to make sure that he corrects it. And that's what we're going to have to look out for at Bramall Lane. So I wouldn't be against it if he starts Rothwell. I'm all for it, because it's not like Rothwell's a slouch defensively. It's just that, if there is a pass to be made, he's more likely to do it than Gruev is. But Gruev will just stick in there and do what Farke said, especially like he did in the previous away games. And maybe Farke, as we know, he likes that defensive work. Maybe he'll go with that. That's why I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next Monday. Really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to that game more than I was the one yesterday, because I feel like that's going to be a real test next Monday.
Mate, you're more wary of the Sheffield United game than you were the Sunderland game.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. See, I was the opposite. I was
really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the opposite. Yeah, I thought Sunderland would cause. I just think everybody was kind of overlooking them a little bit, and I thought that they're a strong team here. They've got good footballers, and I thought, if they come 10 out of 10, it's going to be a tough game for Leeds. And I thought in that first half, it was. I mean, they were probably close to the best they've been this season in terms of just halves of football. But the Sheffield United game, I don't know. I think there's probably an understanding from their side and maybe their fan base as well, which I know is not indicative of how they will be, that they're going to be a lot better. And I do think they'll be a lot better. But I do think we're probably a different beast to what we were earlier on in the season. But styles make fights, don't they, KG? And we against Sunderland last night, in comparison to the side that started at the Stadium of Light, there was Nonto, there was Ramazani, there was Rothwell, there was Strauk. It really was a different Leeds that set up last night against Sunderland to what it was at the Stadium of Light. And I do wonder whether or not Leeds should go a little bit. I'm not saying start Ramazani and Nonto here, by the way, but I'm just saying I wonder if Leeds should get closer to that game that we played against Sheffield United at Ellen Road with, the likes of Rothwell in there and Strauk at the back, or whether or not it's just going to be maybe a different Sheffield United. So Leeds have to set up accordingly to that. It's a real decision for him to make.
It's a real interesting one as well, because the Rothwell thing away from home, I mean, has he really done that well overall?
Well, just sorry, mate, just to cut you off there. He, him and Tanaka from I mean, people may forget this, but towards the back end of the year, when they were playing in away games as a partnership, teams were scoring goals against us, and they didn't. Yeah. It was great at the start, wasn't it? It was great, and they're beautiful football players at this level. But I don't think defensively, when they started as a partnership, Leeds were as efficient as as a partnership.
Yeah, and that's something, and I just try and look at it from Daniel Farke's point of view, who does like to see us defend well first, and then get the goals after. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting game, and I only say that as well because Sheffield United, I know they've had a 3-point deduction, but they've won quite a few games. They've been in some games as well where they've been looking garbage, but then they'll win, and that's a sign of a good team at this level, where they look like, oh, they're going to drop points here, and then all of a sudden, it'll be Campbell, it'll be Harmer. It'll be one of those guys that comes through for him. And, Amahadvich has now started to score goals from set pieces for them again. So there's a few threats to be, to look out for from their team. And of course, Harrison Burrows. I don't know. Did we speak about Harrison Burrows together, or?
We spoke about Harrison Burrows loads. Yeah. We spoke about him loads in the preseason. Yeah.
He's come as advertised. He's been absolutely brilliant for them. He's been absolutely brilliant. So, but
3 million quid, wasn't it?
Yeah, 3 million. And if they get promoted, I think they have to pay another 4, which I'm sure they'll be happy to do upon promotion. But it's like I said in the Sunderland game, and I said this in the previews before, because a lot of people were worried about the Sunderland game. All the threats that Sunderland have, we have too. All right. Tanaka has been an absolutely brilliant signing for us this season. So we've got a midfielder there that I'm sure they would love to have. Solomon and James have been, a dynamic duo together. They relegate. Think about it. And when you deep it at championship level, Solomon and James have relegated Ramazani and Nanto to a bench in the championship. It's insane depth that we've got. And the only thing that we had after the transfer window closed was just, please no one get injured, because as long as no one gets injured, we will be absolutely fine. And when you look at the next 4 games, I think 2 of them, we've got a good gap in between. And Danny Farker's spoken about that before as well. As long as you get a good gap, they get good rest. And then it's not until we get Portsmouth away and then Millwall at home that we get a 2-3 day gap. More than enough time for all these players to rest, recover, and go again. And that's why I'm confident for the remainder of the season.
And even just looking at the minute details of it, Verber's had surgery, hasn't he? So it looks like he's going to be back like a little bit sooner than maybe with first thoughts. So you may be looking at Leeds United with hopefully a nigh on fully fit squad, barring Patrick Bamford, who's just been on the trampolines. Sorry, forgot. I'm not allowed to mention him.
No, you could mention him, but he's come as advertising. I don't need to say nothing about him. His availability record says it all for me. I don't need to say nothing else. But yeah, I know you've got a kind of different opinion about Piroe. How have you been finding Piroe lately?
Yeah. I think I think last night was. I think when he's a really interesting conundrum, isn't he? You look at the face of it, and my word, he's on the road to a golden boot, isn't he? He's on the road to the golden boot. I don't think Borja Sainz is going to be able to match him. I think probably the only 2 players that are going to match him in terms of productivity is going to be Dan James and Isidore. That's literally it. James obviously 4 goals behind him. Isidore now I think 2 goals behind him. But yeah, I think there's unequivocally no question now as to who starts, and I think it's got to be Piroe in just terms of productivity. Me and you spoke, KG, before the season started, and we were very, very hyped on Joseph, in terms of the level that he might be able to get to this season, especially with that phenomenal pre-season. But you've got to look at the results right now. I think the context is, and you saw it with Ramazani a little bit last night, for me, if you don't give players minutes, they'll naturally be a little bit rusty. I was seeing last night on social media, look at Ramazani, he's not good enough. How did people think that he would start? And it's like, really? Is this what we're doing right now? And I just think that is the context, really. You don't give players minutes and they're not going to be able to perform at that level. And that's always the context I apply with the whole Joseph and Piroe argument. I think Piroe is just good at what Piroe is good at. I think when the ball is on a plate for him, there's no one you would rather have in the championship when the ball is on a plate for him. Off the ball, do I think he's as good as maybe other players in the division? No, I don't. And that's probably the frustration I get with him a little bit at points. And I think, as I say, if the ball isn't on a plate for him, I don't think Piroe's going to be that effective, but and the goals that he scored this season have been evidence for that, really. But yeah, he doesn't come out for me right now, mate. But I would like to say as well, I've not mentioned it. I thought Joseph, when he came on, was really good last night, and it's good to see him, come on and make a little bit of an impact. But yeah, how do you see him, mate? I know we've not had a chat about Piroe.
No, I've been the same with Piroe since the start. As long as you're not asking him to do something that is foreign to him, which is run around like a headless chicken, then he's a good player up front. I'm not saying he's the ultimate player, but I'm saying use him to his strengths, which is soft touch, technique, movement in and around the box. If you're asking him to chase around, then he's going to look awkward, isn't he? And there was kind of signs of that yesterday. It was kind of looking like a game pre-2025 where we're asking him to run about a bit. But if you play it into him and you ask him to lay it off, his technique is beautiful. It's like that. And I'm not saying he's the same, please. It's like a Bergkamp-esque kind of technique and touch where it's just light, it's just soft, but he's got an eye for goal. And that's one.
I thought you were going to go. I did think you were going to go Viduka then, but Bergkamp I'll take as well.
No. Because you see, with Viduka, he had the strength to go with it. You know what I mean? Viduka, hey, listen, don't get me started on Viduka. You know what I mean? People already have the 99, 2000, and 2001 mentions. Yeah, here you go, take a shot. But no, listen, Piroe is if you're asking him to play the role he has, he's going to score goals. And I do think he'll end up with over 20 by the season's end. I think that is definitely in his future. He'll be back on the goal trail.
Dude, I think he was on 14 last season. I think
he's
he's already on the same.
Yeah, 6 to go, and I'm sure we'll get a penalty between now and then, which if he's on the pitch, he'll score. Yeah, he's got a good chance of getting over 20, absolutely. And he's been popping up with assists, and I know that his general play isn't strong, but even in previous games to this, his link-up play was really good. Like, he was setting off a lot of moves and laying off a lot of good balls where maybe Brendan Aaronson would put it behind the player, Piroe would put it in front, and things like that. He's good at that kind of stuff, so use him to his strengths.
100%. Alan says, morning, Connor. Brilliant result last night at this stage. It's more about result than the performance, but Sky commentators were willing Sunderland to win. Yeah, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, Sky. They've always been on the I don't know, the push.
We're a meal ticket, man. EFL, man. They need us.
Yeah,
they need us, man.
They don't want us leaving. They don't want us leaving. True Onyx says, I wish Aaronson had the finesse of... Oh, well, yeah, I mean... Let's talk on him. Last night, a bit of a tricky game for him. I thought Coventry was really good. Brendan Aaronson. Watford, I thought he was decent as well. What are your thoughts on him? Me and you haven't had a proper chat about him. Once again, is it the exact same thing as what you said about Piroe? Which I think is a really good assessment of him. Is it, you play to Brendan Aaronson's strengths. You almost know Brendan Aaronson's strengths. You know he's not a Pablo Hernandez, an Emi Buendia on the ball. You know he's not got that level of, as Tronic says, finesse. But he's going to give you other things in other departments, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going to give you moments. And that's what you've got to expect from him. He's not going to give you Jorginho Rutter. He's not going to carry you from one end of the pitch to the other. He's not going to give you a nice silky pass, but he has been providing some of those. But what Brendan Aaronson's done lately in the game is he's been given the assist before the assist. He's been given the pre-assist. He's been involved in the build-up for the goals.
I love how this is a thing now, by the way, the old semi-assist.
Hey, listen. Hey, wait. but in terms of
pause.
In terms of Aaronson in his game, it all depends on what you're expecting of him. Because if you're expecting him to dominate a game, you're going to be disappointed. But if you're looking for him to pop up eventually in the game and give you an assist, give you a goal, he's going to give you that. Has he looked leggy in a couple of games? He has, but Farke has trusted him. I think he started, is that 30 league games in a row?
Yeah, this is what I mean. That's what I mean when people are just like, "Oh, Brent, he clearly wants another number 10." It's like, well, I don't know. Would he be in and out of the side? Would he be testing a little bit more if he wanted another number 10? You'd think he would.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and that's why I had doubts about the 10 in the January window as well, because he literally plays Brendan Aaronson at every point, and he even said in a recent press conference he doesn't get tired. We don't have any issues about his fitness, so he's going to play. So whether you like it or not, there's no point rejigging the team to put someone else in the 10. It's Brendan Aaronson unless he's injured or suspended. And I think overall, Connor, I think he's done well for us this season. I think he's been a good cog in the team overall in the league games. I do.
I wanted to get your thoughts on Daniel James, and I wanted to get, because me and you have spoken about the Premier League a hell of a lot, and I just wanted to speak on his development really. I think for me, his decision making and his composure has definitely got to a different level this year. I used to criticize him for a little bit of the Jack Harrisons, where at points there wouldn't be that composure on the ball, where you kind of slow down at points and you get your head up. He did it a couple of times last night where he doesn't get his head up and it's almost quite instinct. He gets the ball, runs with his head down, and then has a shot. Sometimes in your light, look, you're just not going to get away with that in the Premier League at all. You can have chance after chance after chance in the Championship with this kind of squad caliber that we've got. But in the Premier League, that might be few and far between, and you feel like he's going to be really important in a system in the Premier League cage if we get there, because that outball is going to be huge, absolutely huge for someone like Dan James on the counter attack. Do you think he's developed right now, from your perspective, into a more well-rounded winger in terms of some of the deficiencies that we've spoken about him before, his decision-making, maybe, shot efficiency? Do you think he's developed to a stage of which that Leeds United could utilise him as a starter in the Premier League?
Oh, you're giving me questions like this already.
Yeah, man.
No, it's a good question, but it's all go ahead.
I was just going to say, because it's I think me and you've spoken about him before, and we kind of hold off on the Premier League chat. I think we hold off on, you know, the adaptability. You're not going to throw 9-10 Leeds players into a Premier League season. We have to be realistic here. We have to assess what that level is right now and how it's even developed, KG, to a ridiculous level since we've been up there. You know, 3 years ago, whatever it was, the level it's got to now. And I just wonder with James's development, and I think he has actually turned into a better player. It's all well and good talking about a player coming down like Firpo, a player coming down like Brendan Aaronson, like Dan James, and not being great at the top level, but adapting to the Championship and being good there. And I think that is the big differential here. But I actually think Dan James's game, his overall game, has developed in a way that you can actually say, no, actually he could work at Premier League level if we were to utilize him, you know?
Yeah. And that thing you talk about, the head down thing, that's what I love about him at this level, because you need that. Because like you saw yesterday with a few of the players, it's 2-3 touches, it's trying to get that perfect pass. James is just going to put his head down and get that ball across the box. And sometimes you need that, all right? Sometimes you just need that pace and power in there. And that has been the most improved thing about him, is composure. Absolutely. He was all speed before, all speed, but then that end product was honking. And this is where people rewrite history and say, how did we ever leave him on loan, move him out on loan? He was moved out for a reason at the time. And it's because we were looking to get Cody Gakpo or whoever it was at that point. But it's because he was very one-dimensional, but he has improved. And look, what is he now, 26, 27? It may be that it's come a bit later. Maybe that move to Man United was a year or two too soon for him, and he could have done with a bit more Championship development. But he has taken it up a level. But in the Premier League, he's going to have to play. What was the game previously? Was it Watford where he got the 2 opening goals? It was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. That's how he's going to have to be for us in the Premier League. He's going to have to be that efficient. Now, I'm not saying he's going to score on every shot, but we're going to be under pressure in the Premier League, and he's going to be that outlet if he's still here, and he's going to be expected to be that efficient when we go up. He's got to score 1. And I think they say if you got however many goals in the Championship, half of them, he's going to have to make them very important goals when we go up in terms of his output. It's going to be important because, like in the Championship, you're not going to get 6-7 opportunities where we're going to be. You're not. It's not going to happen. So you're going to have to make sure that the decisions you make the right ones in order for give us the best chance to survive. And has he got it in him? I think more and more I do think that now if we can get someone even better on the wing, then absolutely do so. Because my mantra is always this: your starters, when you go up, you've got to move your starters down to the bench, and your bench players you've got to sell. That's how it's got to be. You need to improve your first 11 when you get promoted. There's no, let's go and get Ben Davis for this. Let's go and get this scrub here to fill in the squad. No, you've got to make your starting 11 even better than it is right now. And he's given himself a good case. I like the development in his game. Does he carry it over when he's up against even better defenders, better systems in the Prem? Only time will tell. Only time will tell.
Yeah, it's not, and obviously it's not going to be a case of maybe Leeds being as bad as we were in that first half, but it is probably a case of a lot of teams being able to control us, like Sunderland kind of did to an extent in that first half. There's going to be more of that over an 85-minute spread, isn't there, in the Premier League? And even obviously to a greater extent, but it is going to be that pattern of play of which Leeds are going to come up against a quality side and we're not going to be able to break through. It's going to be difficult for us to find our sort of fluid way. And KG, that Premier League level is, if we do get there, he's going to be the recruitment. The recruitment has got to be, it's got to be 11 out of 10, hasn't it? It's got to be 11 out of 10, never mind 10 out of 10.
It's got to be more hits than misses, because you're not going to get everyone. Even this season, with Isaac Schmidt, we didn't hit with that one quite clearly with the way Farkas used him overall. But it is, for me, I've already said it many times, the footballers aren't as good as they used to be, but the systems have got better. You know what I mean? And they're very reliant on systems. And when teams get their systems right, you have to try and break it down. But we do have to get the signings absolutely spot on, and there can't be any sentiment. Can't make the same mistake as before. Can't do it, because if we do, then there's no point going up. The perfect thing at the moment with Junior Firpo, by the way, is that he helps us go up and he sees himself after Spain. That's the best thing. You can't get romantically involved and say, please stay, Junior. We need you. No, we don't need Junior Firpo in the Premier League defensively. It just can't happen again. So let him get us promoted, and then let's go and recruit a proper left back, 2 of them, and go up properly this time. you just have to remove emotion. And listen, Leeds, it's a great fan base, but boy, emotion runs wild in this fan base for certain players, especially when they're doing well. Sometimes it's hard for people, but you've got to separate the levels of thinking, okay, he's done it against Sunderland, he's done it against Plymouth. How is he going to get on against Newcastle? How is he going to get on against Villa? Oh, we've got Man City the next week. How is he going to get on in this game? And that's what you have to measure it up against. And we're not going to have 60 to 70% of the ball next season like we have done this year. So there's adapting for the players and the manager to do when we do go up.
Yeah, completely. I guess this kind of moves on. Richard's just said, do you think we'll try sign up Solomon at the end of the season? You just mentioned Rothwell. There's certain players of which, like you said, Leeds are definitely going to have to move on. If we were to get to the Premier League, Solomon, how is it lying with you at the minute? I think I don't know. I think if it is 10 million, then a lot of people would turn around and say that's an absolute snip. He's worked at Premier League level before. Of course, I think the whole issue with him has been 25 years of age, 3 major surgeries. Can he keep it up for a long period of time? Because 10 million still for a promoted side is a big outlay, obviously on his wages as well, which will not be cheap. We know we're paying him 50, 60 grand a week now. What do you do with him? I think the only pushback I'd have on him, KG, is I think a lot of wingers in the Premier League are extremely explosive. I think you see them, agile-wise, they're absolutely rapid. And I think Solomon has got that wonderful technical play. I think on the ball, it's almost like a glue, isn't it? Glue to the ball to his foot. I think the only thing would be that explosiveness to get away from a fullback. I think you saw him sort of against Hume last night, being funneled a little bit centrally. And I know he likes to do that, but I think when you're funneled centrally, because you can't beat a guy on his sort of far side, I think in the Premier League, you kind of as a winger need to have those two facets to your game. You need to be able to go on the outside, need to be able to invert as well. And that's not a general comment, by the way, because I think Solomon's done that for a lot of this season. But I guess I would say if you're starting him in the Premier League because of that level up, it's that speed, of which is probably the only thing I'd worry about with Solomon. His injury record, but that speed, I think, over a sort of 5 to 7 yard basis, of which I know Tottenham fans say he's lost a yard since his meniscus injuries. So, I mean, where do you stand on that? Do you think it'd be an automatic signing for Leeds, or would you sort of push back on that a little bit?
It depends on the price. If you're talking between 10 and 15, I like that price point for a player like him, because I do feel like he's a top level player, but it was all about the injuries for me. I said multiple times when we signed him, as long as he stays fit, he's going to be one hell of an asset at this level. And it wasn't until maybe December, because he was unfit, he got injured, and he did look a little bit overweight at one stage as well. We'll say that. But he's been on fire. He's been absolutely brilliant. And if he's got the hunger to succeed, and it does sound like whenever you hear him speak, he wants to play at the top level. That's his main aim. And if he can do it at a club where he feels comfortable, where he knows the layup of the land, he knows what it is, what he needs to do, at 10 to 15 million, that's a good signing, because there's wingers that are costing 30 to 40 that are way worse than Manor Solomon in the Prem. Way worse. It's not even close either. So he would be a good building block, but he wouldn't be my only one. But the speed, he has lost a yard. That is definitely true. And I know that just from his Shakhtar days, by the way. But he would just be, you've got Dan James on the other end for speed. You need variance in the Premier League. You need difference. You need different recipes in the Premier League to be successful. You know what I mean? You've got to have different characteristics, different skill sets in multiple positions. You can't have it all the same. And that's where I like the difference with Solomon and James. And you can see why it's worked for him this season. And look, I would sign him if it's a reasonable fee. And I tell you a promising thing as well, Connor, because I do worry about his injuries. That knee on knee from Hume to Solomon, I thought that was him done when he was staying down. Oh Lord, that's his knee tested to the max, and he got on with it. So that is a good sign for him personally in his road to recovery from those serious injuries.
Brilliant tackle, by the way, that wasn't it?
It was nice.
Brilliant tackle.
I got no problems with it, man. I love a good tackle like that. I love a reducer as well. I love it when the player's got away and the player says, nah, and just takes the legs away. I appreciate a reducer. I do, man.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I thought we were doing a little bit of a watch along last night, and everyone in the comment section was saying that's a horrible tackle. And I said, look, if that was Ampadu, on Isidore, you'd be loving it. It's a great tackle. You just got to give it up, man. It was a good tackle, man. Yeah, the shouting at him afterwards as well. You feel like there was something a little bit different there, maybe just in terms
But
of
that is
need.
Sunderland, and their other player, Luke '09. I mean,
Oh,
he is just
God.
an absolute dirtbag. But I
He's
tell you, if he's on your team,
unbearable.
you love him.
Gives me very much, obviously, ability wise, I don't think it's that high, but very much gives
Berardi,
me spot on.
yeah.
That's literally Berardi, innit? It's Berardi.
Yeah, not the greatest player by any stretch of the imagination, but if he's on your team, you probably love him, for parts of it anyway. But yeah, he's one of those. I always imagine when you've run out of parachute payments and you think, all right, go and get Luke '09. Let's go and get him in there. You know what I mean?
Definitely. So you've spoken about the championship level as well. This is
Yeah.
obviously me and you having a general chat as well, not just about last night. But you've mentioned as well the level. I think you're spot on, by the way. I think when you look at the level of the championship, especially with what it was last season and some of the ballers that were in there last season in comparison to this season, the level's definitely reduced, in my opinion. Are there any sort of standout names at this level? I mean, Angus Kinnear famously said that, when we went up last time under Bielsa, we were going to get the cream of the crop of the championship. I think Watkins was our target at that stage, and we ended up going for Rodrigo for 30 million quid. Is there anything in your mind that obviously would take players in a very cream of the crop stance? And if so, who would you look at? I mean, you have to give a list of names, but are there certain names that have stood out to you that could adapt to the Premier League? Or do you think it's just Leeds need to go up to the Premier League, get maybe a few Premier League cast-offs, some players from the continent, and really stretch that recruitment side from that standpoint?
Well, see, that's the interesting thing. Cast-offs in what way? Because we shouldn't be going for Premier League cast-offs. We should be going for people that will improve the team. So when you say a Premier League cast-off, what kind of name are you thinking?
Probably, if I was looking at Premier League cast-off, maybe a little bit harsh, but if you were to go up there and nothing was to happen to him, a James McAtee as an example, a
Okay.
cast-off at his parent team, could Leeds go in for 25 million quid, get a James McAtee as just an example.
Right. Okay, right. The only one that I think would make a real difference, because he is not a championship player, is Harmer, and he's proven that through the season. He has an issue staying fit for 90 minutes, by the way, in terms of his fitness. But when you do have him on the pitch, he's a difference maker, and I'm very surprised that a low
KG, another one. Sorry, mate. Just to interrupt you there, mate. He's Harmer as well. He gives overweight vibes as well, doesn't he? Like we were just speaking about Solomon, but every time I see Harmer, I think he's a bit of a chunky monkey, isn't he?
That's his body shape, though, man. That's his body shape. Yeah. He's a chunky guy. That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. He's got a little bit more to hug. One of those. But he's just got that body type, but his quality on the ball is absolutely brilliant. He's a big difference maker, and I do think whether Sheffield United go up or not, I do see him in the Premier League. Richard Mell saying Delap at Ipswich. That's an interesting one, because even though people keep saying, yeah, he's probably going to go Chelsea and everything else, this is another thing where Leeds United have to be better at, is you're going to have to compete for the better players. But you know what you can do? Get in there early. What's his name? Radrazani once said about Charles de Ketelaere, if only we had gone in for him 2 weeks earlier. Well, then why didn't you? Go in early, then you can get ahead of AC Milan, get ahead. It happens all the time. I mentioned before a couple of years about when we got relegated that Kirkes would have been on my list because he's ready. Now Kirkes is at Bournemouth and is now worth 50 million. You get in there before. Even in our own league, Rotherham get relegated, Victor Johansson. He's gone to Stoke because Stoke have obviously gone out, pitched it to him and said, we want you. Here's 1 million to Rotherham. We've got you. If he's waited, he's probably got a host of clubs queuing up for him. But if you get in there, sell a player a project, especially in the Prem, you've got all the chance to get that player. And Delap, if he's relegated at Ipswich, will be a Premier League club. And if those top clubs are still stalling, going, we can go in and say, Delap, this is you. We're going to add this, this, and this. What do you say? You know what I mean? And that's how you get signings done. We shouldn't be doing it at I hope there's no competition for this player. There's always going to be competition for the best players, always. But in regards to that championship, in terms of the players, there's not a lot. In fact, there's very few I can think of that I would want to take. I've got other names from around the continent and even in the Premier League that I would love Leeds United to even try and get. But championship, it isn't like it was before. There is no Somerville, there is no Jorginho. It's Harmer, whatever we've got. A couple of Sunderland players that in isolation, I don't think make a big difference to our team when we go up. You know what? If you know what I mean. If we sign in Job, does he make the big difference for us? I'm not sure. So it's one of those where we have to recruit smart, and it doesn't have to be expensive as well. There's some gems on the continent that have been left at their clubs that are ready to be picked off, and then will be those fans saying, how did we get this? How is this player not at a bigger club? How did Leeds United get him? Much like Rafinha, now he's in Ballon d'Or conversations. We have to do that when we go up. It has to be consistent. Get those players, and just don't be sentimental to players that aren't good enough to come with us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think probably standouts that, you've got to look at who makes Leeds United.
Give me some of your standouts, because you're interesting when it comes to names like this. Let me hear some of yours.
Well, we've said off air, and you didn't agree with me, and I think I don't. Maybe the chat will disagree with you here, which is unusual with you. I think adaptability. I've said Isidore. I think Isidore would be a really good signing. Obviously we spoke about his age off air as well, which I think makes a little bit more of a difference. I don't understand why he wouldn't at least acclimatise to the Premier League. I mean, you can't judge him right now, obviously. But you couldn't judge Eze, you couldn't judge Elise. I'm not saying he's going to be that level, but he's never been exposed to Premier League football before, so you can't really say he's not going to. We haven't got the evidence to say, and we're taking a punt, aren't we, KG? He could get to the Premier League, and I think he will one day, and he'll get to the Premier League, and he might flop. I do look at what Isidore would bring as a Premier League striker, as a lower league Premier League striker, and I think there's a lot of attributes there of which I would take, and I don't think he'd be mad expensive as a number 9. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's not. But by the way, I'm not saying that he's not Premier League standard. He's just not my first choice. You know what I mean? If we're having to punt on a new striker, Isidore, if we were signing Isidore, I'd be thinking, this is a gamble. Every signing's a gamble, by the way, even if even one that you think is going to be a slam dunk. But I'm thinking there's other options out there that we can get in the Prem.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Would they be more like loan signings from the top teams, or would they be kind of just players maybe in and around the European circuit? I'm not pushing you for a name because I know you like doing this, but
yeah. Loan, we're gonna have to mix it up. It's not about spending 100. We've already done that. Listen, what was that credit card bill that we had upon coming down? 173 million, and what did we get for that? I mean, we didn't get too much. It's about being smart with the signing. It's not always about spending a bunch of money. And you do have to look at like someone like a Liam Delap and go, what's his relegation release clause? I mean, it's things like that.
Massive risk on that, KG. That was a huge risk. That was a huge risk when they went for Liam Delap, So, yeah, obviously his pedigree was probably a little bit higher than the likes of Isidore now. We've been at Man City and coming through that development side. But obviously that championship loan he had prior going to Ipswich wasn't a great one. So that was a massive risk, and it's kind of paid off for them, hasn't it? It's going to be a risk us going up, but like you say, you've got to hedge your bets, haven't you? And I don't know how do you do that as a recruitment side, I guess, if you've not seen
what other names for the championship do you think would be good to take?
Armour, definitely.
Yeah,
he'd probably be one that stands out. You're right. You are right. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I really like Vinny Souza, but I liked him. I'm just not 100% sure with his injury record as well. That's one that I would go for. You're right, though. It's tough because you're improving that starting 11, and then you're looking at the adaptability to that Premier League. So there's few and far between. I do like Sirkin at Sunderland, the left back, but I know he's had his injury problems.
Injuries.
Yeah. Injury problems again. Interesting when you mentioned Job. So I think Job is going to go. He'll end up going in the summer. It's probably going to be maybe another German move. He might follow his brother's steps, or it might just be immediately to the Premier League in a Palace. But the interesting thing is, but the Palace is one of them. But his parents are so interesting when it comes to the development side. I've seen his mum interviewed before, and she literally just says he will not go for the big move. We want his pathway to be perfect, so we get the best Joe Bellingham and the best Jude Bellingham. So it might not be a Premier League move instantly. It might be another move abroad, Italy, Germany. That'll be interesting, because then obviously he'd move back to the Premier League, wouldn't he, with just this or who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, they did it. They did it with Jude, didn't they? They got shown around United facilities and other ones, and they said, "Nah, we're going to go Dortmund." But with Job, it's not that he's not good enough. That's not what I'm saying. But for where we'll be, I feel like he'll operate better in a more established Premier League team rather than
a relegation battle, as opposed to sort of like a maybe mid-table.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, really, because these are all the things on the checklist, haven't they? They've got to be ticked off. In terms of that, we are going to be in a relegation. I think that's going to be a I don't know. Maybe it's more of a reality now for Leeds fans as they saw what happened last season when a couple of seasons ago when we were relegated. It was just horrendous through that time. But it's going to be a few rough. If we do get up, it's going to be a hell of a lot of rough game weeks. And you've got to have players who, like you say, are adaptable for that. Look, goalkeeper. I think me and you have spoken about this before. You've
wait there. Just before you go off that, just to carry off your last point, just look at the promoted teams from last season, this season, because I'm still watching Premier League football. I'm seeing the looks on Leicester City fans' faces. They were the same looks I had when we was last in the Prem, and it's like, damn.
Yeah.
When are we going to get another win? You know, Arsenal have got no strikers. What happens? Mikel Merino, central midfielder, comes on, scores 2 goals. It was so much like us when we was up. You're thinking, oh, we could do something here. And then all of a sudden, someone that hasn't scored in like 10 years or is not a goal scorer, they get the goals and we go without points. And we are going to be in for a bit of pain next season. And I'm fully aware of that. But we can make it a little bit easier on ourselves. But what we can't do for me is shopping the Southampton, Ipswich, Leicester pools. I don't want to see any of those kind of players at the football club because we're Leeds United, first of all, and we can attract better. Our wage structure will be better. The money that we can spend will be greater. We got a 60 million deal in the Championship. You don't think when we get to the Premier League, 49ers are not going to negotiate better deals when we're in that league?
I agree with you.
We're going to have so much more to play with. We've got the Red Bull network to use as well with players that will come to us in the Premier League rather than, you know, avoiding us in the Championship. There's just going to be a wider pool that we can use in the Premier League as Leeds United.
Obviously, there's realism that has to be applied to it. Obviously, we're a newly promoted side, but there's way more attached to this Leeds side. I think well, outside the top 6, top 8, you know, we're in that 3 conversation of being one of the biggest sides in the country. Really, I think a neutral will tell you that you've got to use that. You've got to use that weight. And you are right. And you've also
we haven't used it enough.
No, we haven't.
Nowhere near enough.
Yeah, and this is it. It's like, you know, do you then, because there is I've seen a bit of a chat there by Curtis Benjamin Sesko. I think there's a realism chat at points of where we can go, but there is also, you know, when you put this host of Championship players in there as well, it's a massive risk. That step up is huge, really. Few people mentioned.
I said it about Ipswich at the start of the season, Connor, is that they've recruited to hopefully stay up at 17th. But if they go down, they're going to have probably one of the best Championship sides you've ever seen. You know, they will lose a couple like Delap. They're going to have they're going to be favourites upon relegation because that squad would be unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I think even the bringing in Alex Palmer, you know, on essentially deadline day, I think it was a really good move. £2 million once again, stating that you don't have to go out and spend a ridiculous amount for goalkeepers. 3 million for Cooper, 1 million for Jukanovic, and now Alex Palmer for £2 million.
Someone in the chat, we're on goalkeepers, has said Ramsdale. Stay away from Aaron Ramsdale, people. Guys, if you want any confirmation about Aaron Ramsdale, I implore you to go and watch his interview with Ian Wright. And even Ian Wright couldn't hide the shock on his face when Ramsdale said this. For 90 minutes on a football pitch, I can't concentrate. Ian Wright looked at this man like, yeah.
That's such a famous interview, isn't it? Yeah.
He's not, for me, I've never rated Ramsdale anyway. He had like 3 good months at Arsenal. Apart from that, he's just an average goalkeeper. I don't get fooled by price tags. I don't care if he moves to his next club for 50 million. We wouldn't benefit from having Aaron Ramsdale, and essentially, it's not a major upgrade from Elan Meslier anyway. So no, rather the devil you know with that one.
Yeah, little birdie tells me as well he'd absolutely welcome a Leeds United move, which, you know, when you're touting Leeds outrunning the Championship, it probably tells you all you need to know about that one.
Yeah, he'd be bantering the fans all game. He'd be joining in all the songs while the goals are flying in, man. Nah, leave him.
Well, we know goalkeepers are a bit nutty, but yeah, if he's not able to focus for 90 minutes and we're fighting against relegation, just no, let's not go there. Little Sparrow says, if Trafford ever signs for us, he eventually turns 30. Would that make him Old Trafford?
Hey,
few people mentioning Trafford. Thoughts?
He's where he should have been this year. The Premier League was too soon for him last season. Way too soon. Got overexposed. What people don't consider is the shots are just different in the Premier League. The manipulation, the shot selection, just better. It's just better. It's just more crisp, more precise. You against better players, and he got cooked. He got cooked in the Premier League. He had to come out in the end. Vincent Kompany eventually had to take him out, but he's been good for him this year. Cannot lie, he's been real good. He's been a difference maker. He's been a big part of their clean sheets. saving penalties, last minute saves. He's been huge for them. So, and I'm glad, man, because when I saw him for the England unders and in that role, I thought, man, this kid's got some good potential. But sometimes the move just comes a little bit too quick for us, for some of them, and that's okay. That's okay. It just means you have to reset, refocus, and rebuild, and that's what he's done. So, big shout out to James Trafford, man. But let me tell you, if Burnley don't go up, there's going to be a fight for his signature, and I think Newcastle might be the ones to get him. I think they might replace Sir Nick Pope and go for a long-term James Trafford.
Yeah. I think it'll be really similar if Sheffield United don't go up, and Cooper as well. I think Cooper's a big one who clubs in the Premier League will be looking at.
Okay.
Let's have a look at a couple more. Niall says, absolutely buzzing after last night. I have to think we're looking very good up to now. It's an exciting time, as with the Red Bull money and stadium plans, you feel like we could do better this time. You
Absolutely,
really
Niall.
it was a one way. It was a one man operation for me. You look back at it now, and Leeds United in the Premier League, it was a one man operation. Look, Ramazani did extremely well to get Bielsa in, the Orta and Kinnear sort of trio there as well. But they didn't ever feel like there was a framework, a backbone, a spine in terms of the structure behind the scenes. It very much seemed like it was Bielsa's call, and the board were a little bit maybe wary of how to go about that. Obviously, they improved the facilities around Ellen Road and Thorpe Arch to his means, but it felt like as soon, KG, as the Argentinian left, it all just crumbled. There was no plan. There was no thought process. Just tells you all you need to know now, doesn't it? When it's like when Leeds were in 17th spot and Feyenoord were about to go and win the league, and then Victor Orta decided to approach Arne Slot. It's very much like that. It was just throw whatever at a wall and see what sticks. And you'd hope right now, maybe similar to Brighton, it always feels like Brighton have got like almost like a 3-stage shortlist for whatever happens regarding the manager, regarding the player leave. And they've always just got a plan of action for whatever happens. I'd like Leeds United to go up. It doesn't have to be at the same level because it's not going to be, obviously. But I'd like us to have plans for every single eventuality, positive or negative.
Yeah, but the thing is, it can get to that level for this football club if everything is done right. Obviously, you got to have some luck along the way, but there's no reason why we can't do what Forest have done eventually in the coming years if we do play our cards right in the first couple of years. Bournemouth have done exceptionally well. That's another one as well. Iriola, he should have been at our gaff. Remember?
Yeah. Remember that one.
I just feel the ownership this time will have learned from the mistakes of the past. They were included in that, though. Not going to, absolve them from all the blame because it was them that vetoed the Jack Harrison deal, which I'm sure they wish they could take back now. Set that 25 million from Leicester and run, but they didn't. They were the ones that said no. Rajazani wanted to sell him. There's just a lot of things we need to do better, and it was falling apart with Bielsa there as well. It didn't just happen.
People forget that, don't they? People forget that.
Again, it's rewriting history, and I get it. Bielsa means a lot to a lot of people, but at the same time, let's go with that narrative that he wasn't being backed financially. Then it's on the coach to adapt to what you've got, and you cannot play man-to-man marking with those players. Not when the run is gone.
As well, KG, you kind of look at the quality of player as well, and you kind of see this to an extent with Uruguay. And if you bring in sort of a better caliber of player for Marcelo Bielsa, these players are not always wanting to run these hard yards. They're not wanting to run themselves into the ground. So it's very easy saying, "Oh, Bielsa would have got us back up, or Bielsa would have kept us up with a better team." Well, that better team, these better players who are coming in and running the hard yards, of which it doesn't like Luis Suarez, maybe even Valverde wanted to do. They're going to turn on that manager, and that I don't think it's exclusive to say, oh well, if Bielsa was back with better players, obviously he'd have had a better chance. But those players have got to be adept to doing what Bielsa wants to do, which was very unique.
Exactly. I always say every system can work, but you've just got to have the right players to do it. If you got a team playing Jurgen Klopp's system for Liverpool, with lesser players, they get hammered every week. High lines, your midfield is just running about trying to get that ball back to the wingers and the fullbacks. It only works if you've got the right horses, and he didn't have them. So, okay, Leeds didn't back you. Fine, we'll adapt. You can't go man for man against the team, these players in the Premier League, and expect results. And it was just constant. It was tiring after a while. But then all the choices made after sacking him, then even after sacking Jesse Marsh, that big old gap we had. Remember that? It was weeks before we appointed someone. It felt like 2 weeks or something. Can't have that again. Has to be contingency plans. And I'll even go as far with Farke. Look, I don't see them sacking Farke in the summer, but Farke has also got to adapt in the Premier League. unlike he did before with Norwich. He's done this before with Norwich. He's gone up looking real good. He even did well with us last season, didn't go up, but he's done it again this year. But he's going to have to adapt. And I think if he doesn't, I don't know if the 49ers are going to risk, having him longer than 10 games to say, oh, we're in trouble. They're not going to risk relegation again. I don't think so. So there's a lot of adaptability for everybody at the football club, fans included as well, by the way. Fans need to adapt their expectations too.
Yeah, they need to heighten them 100%. I think I look at Nottingham Forest and I look at their sort of like three going forward, Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood and Anthony Elanga. And I just think to myself at points, the structure that they've got at the back is very strong. Obviously, Milenkovic, Murillo,
yeah,
unbelievable at the back. And I just think, look, we're not gonna. That's not going to be emulated in probably our first couple of seasons. Although,
Well, Connor, just pause there. Someone just asked, do you think we can attract big players next season? Forest did when they first came up.
Forest did.
They got the goalkeeper. It's escaping me. Please get the name, Connor. Navas. They got him on loan in their first year back after 20 years away from the Premier League. So we can definitely get that better player. We can definitely do it, but it's about ambition of the football club and what we're willing to do. We can definitely do it, people. Not saying we can go get Messi before anyone goes overboard. Not saying we can get any of these kind of players. We're not going to go get Yamal. We know it's not going to happen. We're not going to get back Raf, but we can get those players that have probably been left at clubs where you're thinking they're still there. I thought they would be at Betis or they'd be, at Valencia by now, and they're not. That's where you go and get those players.
I think as well, like, when you look at that Forest style of play, it's quite interesting, really, because they're so structurally sound at the back. The framework's unbelievable. They don't concede a lot of goals. Obviously, the midfield's good. I don't think it's as good as obviously what the top end of the pitches are with the likes of, Morgan Gibbs-White and that sort of four going forward as well. But I think it's really important to sort of almost adapt to the Premier League in that way, where Leeds sacrifice possession cage. And look, we're not going to get the choice in a lot of games, but I don't mind Leeds not dominating the ball and maybe having a little bit more of a focus on counter-attacking. That's absolutely fine. Give them the ball. We know that essentially teams are going to be able to pick us apart. So that is the risk with doing that. But I think there has got to be maybe an emphasis on losing control a little bit and not trying to dominate the ball as much and just maybe utilising and setting Leeds up to counter-attacks. I think that's what Forest have done so well in terms of the development of that squad. I think that's what Leeds simply have to do.
Absolutely. I mean, we had a little taste of it against Watford, very small taste of it where we weren't having a lot of the ball, but when we countered, we were devastating. And that's pretty much what the Premier League's going to look like. I know Farke wasn't happy with the lack of possession, but even in the pre-match presser, he did concede on that and say, listen, we didn't have much possession, but we made it count. And that's got to be his mindset next season, because if he wants control, then you may need to have to go to Man City to get that control, because we're not going to have too much of it next year. And that's what we just have to brace ourselves for, people. It's not going to be easy, but let's make it an enjoyable journey, because last time for me, Connor, that was not enjoyable. I mean, we literally did the debrief around that time, and week after week, man, we was all just looking like this. Yeah. But listen, if the teams below us keep losing, then maybe we can stay up.
I think we saw Brownie lose about 3 stone during that period.
Yeah, even Brownie, the king of positivity, even he was losing it. So that tells you everything you need to know. All right, we just have to be.
Do you remember the mental maths when we were just like, how do Leeds stay up? I remember the debrief we did after the 5-1 game against Palace, and it was just me and you were kind of just like, this is done. We're sort of, well, I was very much like, this is done. You were in the middle, and Brownie was like, well, we can still finish here. And I was like, no, they've gone. They've completely gone.
The thing is with Brownie, he did have a point, because up to a certain point of the season, it was like 8 teams involved. But us being us, we then have to be worse than everybody else and cut ourselves off. And even I got to the point, I don't know what game it was for me. It may have been when Gracia was still here. And that's the only time I've ever on the platform said, sack this manager with Gracia. I think it was the Bournemouth away. I think it was that one. I just said, you know what, man? We're done. We're absolutely done. I know some people go with the collapse and what happened after half time, but that was the game where I thought it's over. And then we had that. Then we had the issue where, West Ham, where they get through to a final, European final, they're drunk, and we still couldn't beat them. And it's like, yeah, forget it. It's done.
Yeah, it was soft, wasn't it? Grazia just seemed like a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a soft touch. It didn't
Slough, man.
yeah, just nothing inspiring about that guy, and
No.
that's what you need at those moments, don't you? Relegation battle, don't you know? You need a manager who can set you up in the right way. Don't get me wrong, but that man management is huge, and he just looked miles off it. I don't know what on earth we're doing there, but
I mean, one of his major things, by the way, I know this is going long, but one of his major things was benching Nanto. And again, people forget this because of the recent history with Nanto, but he was literally the best player in the bottom half of the league. Literally the best player when he arrived at Leeds United. Everyone was talking about him. Man United fans, Arsenal fans. Who's this Nanto they've got? And he had that injury when he came back from international, but he was fit, and he just benched him. And every time he was asked about it, I play who I want to play. Shut up. You know, put your best team out there, mate. We're struggling here. And the whole plan as well, by the way, was Nanto and Prez. That's what it was for a large portion of those games. And
that's why it's not this linear, man. That's why it's not this linear. Just because he's on the bench, it doesn't mean that this guy can't adapt back to the Premier League. I say the same thing with Ramazani. It's not linear. You can't just say because they're not starting now, they're not good enough for the Premier League. You know, you're exposed to them. We've seen players before, man. We've seen Bamford somehow go up to the Premier League, and this is staggering. But Bamford got 15 goals in the Championship the season he went up. He got 17 goals in the Premier League. Rutter has gone up. He's got 5 goals in the Premier League so far. He's got 6 goals in the Championship at Leeds United. So it's not as linear for me to just say, like, it's just interesting you mentioned Nonto there, because I would be keeping 100% those two.
It's an interesting one with Nonto. Yeah. I don't know. Listen, this isn't a keep sell video, but I don't know if he's going to be here. I think he may seek a fresh start, maybe, and maybe Leeds might be happy for him to do so and start again. But
depends on the money, doesn't it? I guess.
Yeah, of course, always.
I mean, when they brought him in for 4.5 million from was it Switzerland? I think it was Switzerland.
Yeah,
they brought him in 4.5 million. If they make sort of 15-20 million pound profit, but still has depth in the Premier League, KG. If he is on the bench and Ramazani's on the bench in the Premier League, I think it's not staggering depth. Of course, it's not in the Premier League, so we've got to talk about the level difference. But it seems like decent depth, doesn't it, in terms of what we got over there?
It's better than what we had before. I mean, one of those benches I saw, I think it goes around every so often, but I think it's when we had McKinstry and all these guys on the bench.
McCarran.
It's like, what was it? Honestly, when I look back at that period, and this isn't just hindsight talking, what was we trying to achieve? Like, seriously, we was trying to keep Rafinha, we was trying to keep Calvin Phillips, but also trying to say, okay, you're going to have Tyler Roberts here, Luke Ayling, Liam Cooper. Yeah, go on, lads. You know, we're going to go for it here. What was we were just trying to go on hopes, isn't it? With Radrazani, just trying living on.
Let me read this starting 11 out when we lost 4-0 to Spurs. Meslier, Ayling, Llorente, Strout, Firpo, Robin Koch in defensive midfield, Rafa on the right, Dallas Forshaw in the middle, Harrison wide left, and a little bit of a guess as to who was up front that day.
Was it Dan James?
It was Dan James, yeah, nice knowledge. And then on the bench, this is the depth that we had. Noah Kenner, Crescencio Somerville, Charlie Cresswell, Joe Gelhardt, Klaassen, your favourites, Tyler Roberts, Shackleton, Click, and Rodrigo. That was what we had on the bench. Rough days. So yeah, you're hoping that it's slightly better this season.
Yeah, and that's one change I want as well. So fans don't have to try and convince themselves that certain players are good for the Prem. Like hearing Forsh is a good player. It's like, no, he's not. Like, please, I know that's what we've got, but you don't have to try and convince yourself that Adam Forshaw is a Premier League player. He is not. And it was proven game after game. Heat map Forshaw. But look, hopefully we'll move on from those days and it will be better upon our return if we go up.
If we go, we've got to preface it with that. Sheza says the only thing that worries me is falling apart after the international break.
Nah.
Yeah, I don't. Not for me. I think post international.
I think it's because it happened last season, so I think naturally some people will worry. But I would also say, on that vein, then we shouldn't have as many points as we have at this point of the season that we didn't have last year. Things change. Things change in football, and I think we'll be fine after the international break. I do.
Is QPR giving you night tremors, KG, away from home, or you still think it's a Watford Coventry situation where it's reversed from last season?
Yeah, it's different. It's different this season, man. It's the whole feel of it's different. I think, you know, even going by Gear Vogi's post, he kind of like like says what I'm thinking kind of thing in terms of just the feeling, the vibe, and the group dynamic. Because this isn't just a good group of friends or things. These are actually good players playing together, which is the bonus that we had that we didn't have before. Whereas they were good friends, but just not very good players.
Yeah.
And then it's very different this time around. And that's why I've just got a bit more of a confident feeling. Look, this could all blow up in my face. I guess that's what we're here for online, you know, to get laughed at.
And get
But
everything right.
I just feel like this is going to be it for us. I think we're in the top 2 and we can watch the playoffs stress free and see who's going to join us next year.
That'll be nice. Great banter today, guys. Love it when Cage is on. Don't we all, mate? Don't we all? Amy says, guys, I hear what you're saying, DF, but he's not been testing the Premier League Norwich since strength, and if the 49ers back. Yeah, once again, it's like me and Cage have spoken about Eastern Orb in the classic example. It is naturally a risk because the evidence isn't there that Daniel Farke's done it in the Premier League. So there is a little bit of a risk there because the 49ers, are they going to go out to strengthen a Daniel Farke Leeds United side, or are they going to go out to strengthen Leeds United?
It's got to be the second one.
It's got to be a second one because if the likelihood is, well, the likelihood is if we get to the Premier League, based on the numbers, you get sacked. Like that's the likelihood, you know, when you look at a lot of the promotion managers, they do lose the job in the first season. So, you know, owners panic as well at certain points. But I think the big thing here is the 49ers have just got to identify this if it's going wrong early and make that decision. It's not to say that will happen, but I think I think that's the key point, isn't it, KG? They've got to recruit, not for Daniel Farke. They have to recruit for Leeds United so these players are adaptable to most systems.
Yeah, and that's what I'll be doing in my videos in the summer. I'll be thinking of players for Leeds United that a manager can work with, because we've done it previously with Bielsa where he wanted runners and, you know, very little tech, but as long as you run around, cool. Jesse Marsh wanted all these very narrow players. So you're thinking, okay, well, who can fit in a Jesse Marsh system? We've got to do it a little bit different this time. But into Amy's point about his previous stints at Norwich, he was also guilty of not adapting with the players that he had. So he didn't get backed. That's fine. But then he kept getting beaten heavily because he wasn't adapting to the players that he had. So he was starting to stifle Max Aaron's development. Max Aaron's literally went from a player that was going to be going to Barcelona to now only just going to Valencia on loan. You know, he stifled their development, knocked a lot of people's confidence because of the system that he was employing, where it's just beating after beating. And it's not to say they're not going to lose games, but Norwich will lose him very heavily as well. So that's something he's got to adapt. And I just hope that he's learned his lesson, because quite frankly, whether I believe he's a Premier League manager or not, I don't want to keep changing the manager. I'm bored of it. I was bored of it when we was in the Prem. I was bored of doing videos saying Gracia's out, Skubala's in, you know, Skubala's out, Allardyce is in. There's no stability there. So if Farke can get it right, I hope he does. I really do. And he's got to have learned lessons from his previous stints at Norwich.
100%, mate. 100%. Right, mate, we'll leave it there. KG's channel, as always, is in the title, everybody. I want all of you to go and follow KG for some excellent content over there. He's taken an hour and nearly a half out of his time, and I've not told him he was going to be for an hour and a half, so he could have told me to shove off. So thanks so much for joining, mate. And everybody, yeah, really good stream. The most, no offense to anybody else or even just myself in my own company, but I've really enjoyed this, mate. It's been a real bumper stream, and yeah, make sure you check out KG as always, guys. One of the OGs on the channel. As I say, slap a like on the video as well, everybody, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers.